You know that feeling when you're trying to get your head around something important? Like, say, why some kids just seem to click with reading and others?
Yeah.
Well, others struggle.
Oh, absolutely.
You end up scrolling through all sorts of articles, hearing different views, and it can honestly feel like you're lost in a maze.
Exactly. And that's the kind of challenge we really enjoy tackling here.
We've waded through a huge amount of research for this one.
Yeah, a real mountain, over 470 studies. That's more than 85,000 individuals involved. We've tried to pull out the really crucial bits for you.
So today, our mission is to understand how a family's socioeconomic status, people often call it SES, how that connects with children learning to read.
Right.
Now, SES is a term you probably hear quite a bit. This study doesn't dive into every single detail, but generally think of it as relating to a family's income, education, jobs, that kind of thing. They're standing in society.
Mm-hmm. And the big question we're asking, based on this really massive analysis, is this. Is the link between SES and reading, direct? Or are there other things mediating it?
Other players involved?
Exactly. This research specifically looked at the role of kids' language skills. Things like phonological awareness, that's basically hearing and playing with sounds in words and vocabulary, just how many words they know.
And what's really interesting, I thought, is they also checked if other stuff changes this relationship.
Yeah, like the child's age or the overall wealth of the country they're in.
And even how SES was measured across all those different studies, right? Or the type of writing system their language uses,
Yeah.
like alphabetic versus others.
Precisely. So the goal for us today is to cut through all that complexity.
Yeah, navigate the research.
And just pull out the most important insights, give you a clear evidence-based picture of this connection without, getting totally bogged down in statistics.
Consider it your shortcut to getting up to speed on a really vital topic.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's dive right in then, the heart of it. Looking at all that data, what was the main finding about SES and kids learning to read?
Well, the clearest message, the big takeaway from pulling all this research together is that family SES does matter. It has a real impact on children's reading abilities.
And reading abilities meeting.
Good question. The study looked at it in 3 ways. Reading accuracy, how fluently kids read aloud, and also reading comprehension, understanding what they read.
Okay.
And consistently, the data pointed towards higher SES being linked with stronger skills in all those areas.
But it's probably not as simple as just, more money equals better reader, is it?
Mm-hmm.
The study went deeper into the how, didn't it? This
Yeah.
idea about language skills being a kind of go-between.
Yes, exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting. The analysis showed the link between SES and reading isn't just sort of A to B. A big part of that connection is explained by the child's phonological awareness and their vocabulary knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it maybe like this. SES can have a direct effect, sure, maybe through more books at home or access to tutoring, things like that.
Right, resources.
But it also seems to significantly boost the development of those core language skills we mentioned.
The phonological awareness and vocabulary.
Exactly. And then it's those stronger language skills that really pave the way for better reading. So SES kind of works in 2 ways, directly and indirectly through language.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap those terms. Phonological awareness, that's about hearing and manipulating the sounds inside words, like knowing cat has K-A-T sounds.
Precisely. Being able to play with sounds. And vocabulary is, well, pretty straightforward, knowing what words mean.
Got it.
Yeah, and the researchers used some pretty clever statistical methods to show that these language skills act as really key bridges connecting a family's SES and how well a child reads. They found solid evidence for both that direct path from SES to reading and this indirect path working through language.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
But they didn't stop there, did they? They looked at whether other factors might tweak this relationship. What about things like the child's age or the overall economic vibe of the country? Did those change the basic SES reading link?
This is another fascinating layer. What they found was that while factors like age, country level SES, how SES was measured, or the writing system, while those didn't seem to alter the direct connection between family SES and reading, they did seem to influence the indirect link, the one that goes via language skills.
Okay. So the underlying connection is there, but the strength of that language pathway can shift depending on these other conditions.
That's a great way to put it, yes. The pathways get stronger or maybe weaker depending on the context.
Right. Let's dig into that a bit. How does age play into this indirect effect?
Well, the study suggests that as children get older, the effect of SES on their reading through language skills might actually get stronger.
Why would that be?
It could be because language skills build cumulatively, right? They develop over time. So
Hmm.
any early advantages or disadvantages in language that might be linked to SES could sort of snowball.
Compound over time.
Exactly. A small head start or maybe a slight lag early on could gather momentum and lead to bigger differences in reading later.
That makes intuitive sense. Early foundations matter. Okay, what about the country's overall SES? How does the nation's wealth fit in?
Right, so linking this to the bigger picture, the findings suggest that in countries with a higher average SES, the influence of an individual family's SES on reading, specifically acting through those language skills, might actually be more pronounced, stronger.
Wait, really? So in a generally wealthier country, the family-specific background has a bigger impact via language. That seems a little counterintuitive at first.
It does, doesn't it? But one possible explanation is that wealthier countries might have more resources overall, maybe better preschools, libraries, enrichment programs.
Okay.
And these resources could, potentially, amplify the effect of a family's own background on how well a child develops those language skills, which then feeds into reading.
So the availability of resources might allow those initial SES-related differences in language to translate more powerfully into reading outcomes.
That's one line of thinking, yes. It suggests that access to and perhaps the ability to effectively use those available resources, which SES can influence, is really key. It raises big questions about equitable access, of course.
Definitely. You also mentioned that how SES was measured in the original studies made a difference to this indirect effect. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, this is a methodological point, but it's quite important. They found that when the original studies measured SES using a combination of factors, what's often called a composite index, maybe including income, parent education, occupation altogether.
Right, a broader picture.
Exactly. When SES was measured like that, the indirect effect on reading through language skills seemed larger, more substantial.
So looking at SES more holistically gives a better sense of its influence on the language development that supports reading.
That seems to be the implication. Rather than just say income alone, this broader view might capture more of the ways socioeconomic circumstances shape a child's language environment and, consequently, their reading trajectory.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the last factor you mentioned was the writing system. That sounds really intriguing. Alphabetic versus others.
It really is fascinating. The analysis hinted, and it's maybe more suggestive than definitive here, but it hinted that in languages with alphabetic systems, where letters tend to represent sounds fairly directly, like English, Spanish, German,
Mm-hmm.
the indirect effect of SES on reading via language skills might be stronger.
Why would that be?
The thinking is that phonological awareness, that skill with sounds, is especially crucial for learning to decode in alphabetic languages. You really need to map sounds to letters.
Right, it's fundamental.
So if a child from a higher SES background has stronger phonological awareness, perhaps due to more language play or early literacy experiences, that advantage could give them a particular leg up when tackling an alphabetic script.
Wow. So the actual structure of the language's writing system could potentially amplify the impact of those SES-linked language skills.
It's a compelling idea, isn't it? Conversely, in languages with different writing systems, maybe logographic, like Chinese characters, or syllabic systems, the role of phonological awareness might be different. And so that specific pathway from SES through sound skills to reading might be less prominent.
That has a whole other dimension. Okay, let's bring this back to our listener, the learner.
Yeah.
Why should someone tuning in care about all these, complex interactions between SES, language, reading, age, country, writing systems?
That's the crucial connection, absolutely. Well, if you're a parent, I think this really highlights how vital your role is in just nurturing language from day one.
Just talking and reading.
Yes, talking with your child, reading aloud, singing songs, playing word games, these aren't just nice to haves. They directly build vocabulary and that sound awareness, the phonological skills, and that builds the foundation for reading no matter what your SES background is.
And for educators, what's the message there?
For anyone in education, this study really points towards specific, high-impact areas for support. Actively teaching and developing phonological awareness and vocabulary, especially for kids who might be coming from backgrounds with fewer resources, looks like a really powerful strategy.
A way to potentially bridge some of those gaps we see.
Precisely. It could help level the playing field. And it also encourages us to think about the bigger picture, the resources in a community, how we understand family circumstances. These things matter.
Right. And even if you're just, curious about how learning works, it shows reading isn't simple. It's this complex dance between individual skills, family background, and even the context of the country and the language itself.
It really is a fascinating interplay.
Okay, so let's try and crystallize the main takeaways for everyone listening. What are the absolute must-remember points from this deep dive?
I'd say point one. Family SES is clearly linked to reading outcomes, accuracy, fluency, comprehension. That connection is real. Point two. It's not just a direct link. A big chunk of it works through the child's language skills, especially their phonological awareness and vocabulary. SES helps reading directly, but also indirectly, by boosting those language skills first.
Right, and then point three is about the nuances, isn't it? That indirect pathway through language isn't set in stone.
Exactly. Its strength can be influenced by the child's age, maybe stronger as they get older. Also by the country's overall SES, how broadly we measure family SES, and potentially even by the type of writing system, like alphabetic languages perhaps, showing a stronger effect there.
So the context shapes how powerful that language pathway is.
That's right.
The real aha moment here, then, feels like focusing on boosting those language skills. Sound awareness, vocabulary is maybe one of the most effective levers we have. It helps all kids, but could be especially crucial for mitigating some of the disadvantages linked to lower SES.
Absolutely. Building strong language foundations seems key. It's not just about reading scores, it's about potentially creating more equitable opportunities for all children to succeed.
A really powerful message. Okay, now for that final thought, something for our listener to chew on after we finish. This study showed how something like a language's writing system might interact with SES and language skills to influence reading. If something seemingly that abstract can play a role, what other, perhaps less obvious factors might be weaving through the complexities of learning and development? And thinking about these intricate pathways we've discussed, what does that imply about the kinds of early support and interventions that would really make the biggest difference for all learners? It certainly feels like there's still so much more to understand about these connections.